Okay, we're behind schedule, right? So I have only a few slides here. So the afternoon was, there's this question around AI, right? We had quickly about me, like, why are you listening to me? I think, so I spent 16 years building conversational tech, first-gen IVRs, mobile voice assistants, now bots. I did the first mobile sort of enterprise voice assistant, where's Casey, right? Yeah, so we deployed it with these guys over at USA. It's still live, it's pretty cool. And then co-founder, CEO at Automat. So speaking about non-self-promotion, I mean, we build one of these things. This is me not self-promoting, just so we're clear. No, we're not going to talk about our platform, but what we do want to talk about is this sort of set of statistics. So for those of you that didn't see it, we did a survey on Botness, and there was a number of really interesting results. One of the interesting results I'm going to start pulling up here. This actually just came out on Facebook. This is part of like the Schlick show, so I don't know if we should trust it or not, but it's just a number. We don't put like, that's like the most hashtag thing today. Good one, Chris. So just this data is, it is what it is. It's a Facebook group of people saying the platforms they use for NLP. I don't mean to call anyone out here, right? But I think I am trying to we want to have a pretty open, honest discussion about the state of this, and I'll show you why in a second. The stats from Botness were that over 50% of people were not using NLP platforms, or they were rolling their own. So you see things like, API.ai is great, but there's room for improvement. With a lot of intents, it's hard to manage. The NLP is average, at best. Not necessarily average at best, but for what they're doing, I think is what they're saying, right? It's hard. Last time we had this session in San Francisco, everyone was saying, the NLP platforms work, but they don't necessarily work for me, for my vertical need, and I can't get in under the hood and really figure them out. So I think that's sort of what that's saying. This was from the Botness framework. So what bot frameworks are using? This is not necessarily NLP. This is more on the bot framework side of things. But a really large group of people were just saying, I built my own, right? So we've got the platform. One of the things that came out of the platform, and startup session is, hey, we're building all these awesome features for you. We're building AI platforms and NLP platforms and all this stuff to support you in building great bots. But the reality is a lot of people are not using them. So this was the sort of stat that precipitated this session, which is over half of people either built their own NLU framework or are not using NLU. So I think there's still this open debate about, do we need AI and bots or not? I really, really, really hope that as a community we come together and realize that messaging is a huge opportunity, bots are a huge opportunity, but the overriding large-scale transformative thing that's happening is AI. And if the bot community says we don't need AI, we're just good with buttons, I think we're going to be relegated to the dustbin of, we're going to be a joke when it comes down to what the real transformative things that are happening. So I want to see everybody using natural language understanding and AI in their bots in a smart way, not necessarily in a dumb way. I think Ted talks about a blinking cursor. That's a dumb way, but there's places where this makes sense. So a few comments. I'm not going to go over them, but I think some of these are important. Benchmarks. I can't tell if our stuff's better than WIT or API. I can't tell whether API stuff is better than Lewis. You can't do it. There's no standard benchmarks in the industry. As a community, we should come together and fix that. There are some data sets we can use, but I think there should be a standard benchmark. This is the big one, logic and pure intent, right? So the past generation of systems were mostly one-shot voice recognition systems, things like Alexa, things like mobile voice assistant Siri. Messaging, to the extent that that's what we're interested in, I know there are people interested in voice interfaces, but messaging interfaces are multi-turn dialogues almost 100% of the time. And so we all know if we're in there and building it, the really, really hard thing is having a multi-turn conversational dialogue that also incorporates natural language understanding and not turning that into a complete and utter mess. Again, black box, how do you tune this stuff, right? So we have neural net-based natural language understanding. Try and get your neural net to explain to you why it made this jump versus that jump, right? The story I always tell is I have this one guy, math PhD. It's hard, it's really hard. So I have this one math PhD, the dude's a brilliant guy, and I came out one day and he was like staring at the ceiling, feet up on his desk, and I'm like, slacker. And he went, no, I'm just like envisioning like a 300-dimensional, neural net to try and like debug what's going on. And this guy can do that, but most people can't do that. Different domains, right? So TensorFlow, right? Anybody that's using TensorFlow, I keep saying it is a true gift to the world. It really does help you out a ton, but there's a lot of open source, and folks are able to cobble together pretty good NLU platforms. but they're all basically, every time I talk to someone and say, what are you doing? Oh, we're doing a deep neural net, and that's okay, and it learns sentence structure, and then we go do like a Bayesian, thing to effectively make the word understanding better than the sentence structure. Everyone is like reinventing the wheel over and over again. We shouldn't be doing that. SaaS repo. So WIT started this, API did a little bit of this, but there are all these consumer mobile voice assistant domains like messaging and calendaring, and guess what? USAA can't go and like get a domain that works for them. So everyone is building in the enterprise side of things their own domains. There's not a good set of reusable domains. I don't know if it should be ontologies and tense dialogues, but there should be some level of reuse. And then English, like try and build one of these things not in English right now. It's a fucking nightmare. It sucks. It's really terrible. So, 3 problems, and then we get on to the guys who know it talking about it. So one is, I think they're expert only, right? I think we have had a serious failure to innovate here. We've put UIs, thin veneer of UI on top of I'm a machine learning expert. Most normal people don't know what tagging data is. They don't know why they're tagging data. They don't know what an intent or an entity is, right? We shouldn't have to force people to understand what we're doing. AI should make building things easier, not make things harder. So I think there's a lot of work we can do here to move this out of the expert domain, which is why I asked Oren, like, does he have a vision of, Photoshop which is still expert level, but it's in the domain of somebody, who's normal, not sort of PhD level. The second thing is small data. Most customers don't have tons of data, right? So neural nets are really data hungry, and that's great if you've got like 1 billion labeled utterances, but most people don't have that, and they will never have that. So how are we dealing with that? Thirdly, automated learning. Again, this quote that a VC said to me, which I thought was pretty funny, right? The only thing you can make that's any good in 5 minutes is microwave cookies, and even those are pretty shitty. So I don't know why bot platforms and NLU folks are saying, hey, you can build a bot in 5 minutes. It's gonna suck shit, so you should not build a bot in 5 minutes. You should actually say, how does it get better over time? And I think that's what we should be thinking about as we think about natural language understanding, which is, how does this stuff actually get better? When customers hear machine learning, they hear learning, and things that get better over time. And I think if it's all effort in, quality out, we have a problem. So this is, you know what, I'm not going to skip this. I think Lars should come up and talk about this, but let's get into the content. Let's do it in this order. So Microsoft, now Google, and Facebook come up and sort of talk about how they're improving the situation.